Just like with task-based parallelism and just like with the parallel for and for each, we need to talk about cancellation and exceptions. It's always the same problem whenever you are spawning different threads. You sometimes want to cancel one of the threads or all of the threads, and you want some sort of control over it. So let's take a look at what happens with exceptions and what happens with cancellation. So let's actually have some sort of calculation. So once again, I'll have items as let's say a set of values. Now typically what we've done is we did an enumerable.range to get a set of values. However, I'm going to do something different this time. I'll do a parallel enumerable. Now a parallel enumerable, as you can see, does exactly the same thing, except it returns a parallel query, which means that subsequent operations on it will be multi-threaded. They will use the task abstraction. So we'll do a parallel enumerable range from 1 to 20, and then we're going to process them. So I'll say var results equals items dot, and let's just do a select. So we'll select each of the items, and for each of the items we'll calculate the result. Let's say it can be a double. Result equals math.log, let's say log base 10 of the element. So we calculate this. We can also, for example, do a write line. So I'll do a write line here of what we actually have. So we have the I value specified as follows, and the task ID, let's output the task current ID as well. So we'll output that, we'll return the result. So we have an IEnumerable of doubles, or specifically it's not an IEnumerable, it's a parallel query of doubles, because now the whole thing is parallel. As soon as you start using parallel enumerable, the entire sequence of operations is using completely different kind of select operators, for example. So the whole thing is parallel. Results is effectively a parallel query. And now we're going to try and enumerate those results. So I will do a try, and here I'll just say for each var c in results, and we're going to output it. So I'll console.writeLine, I'll say result equals and then get the result in here. Okay, so that's how I try, and the question is, what are we going to catch? Well, just like with parallel for each, as well as most of the TPL, what we're going to get if we want to throw exceptions out of the calculation, out of the select, is we're going to get an aggregate exception. So we'll catch an aggregate exception, AE, and then I'll just do a handle for it, AE.handle. So essentially we're going to take each of the exceptions and we're going to maybe write line it. So I'll write line. So let's write eGetType.name. Let's put out the name, and then the actual message of the exception, e.message. Okay, so this is our calculation, and let's suppose that somewhere down the line I decide to throw some sort of exception. So yeah, for example, if as soon as the result is greater than 1, I'm going to throw a new invalid operation exception. Invalid operation exception. There we go. Okay, so essentially we know that this loop will fail at some point, and we want to see what exactly transpires when it does. Let's execute this. So let's see what the problem is. We have, oh, the handle has to return whether the exception was actually handled or not. So let's return true here. Let's execute this. Okay, so here are the results. So we do get some calculations in. We do get some of the selects being processed. We do output some of the results, but as soon as the result of 1 is encountered, you can see that we get these invalid operation exceptions, because essentially we actually threw them out of 2 different tasks. You can see that they appear twice here. So this is very simple. It's how you handle exceptions, and it's identical to how you handle them in TPL itself. So that's one thing. And of course, the second thing that we need to discuss is cancellation. And once again, the principle is exactly the same. So you have a cancellation token source. Let's have var cts equals new cancellation token source, like so. And then what you can do is you can call, when you call as parallel. We actually didn't do this because we used the parallel enumerable, so we already have a parallel query here. But after you have a parallel query, what you can do with a parallel query is you can specify with cancellation. And here, for example, you can specify the cancellation token that we have defined above, so CTS the token, and that's really it. And what this means is that we now have a token which will attempt to cancel all of the execution of the loop. So let's see how this goes. I'll comment out the exception here, and we'll actually call cancel from somewhere. So for example, let's suppose that as we're iterating the elements, if we get let's say if we get the element greater than 1, so if c is greater than 1, then we're going to call cts.cancel. Like so. So this essentially causes the parallel loop to cancel. And in this case, just like in the previous examples, instead of an aggregate exception, what you're going to get is an operation canceled exception. So let's add this catch, operation canceled exception, E, and here we'll just write line canceled, and let me execute this. All right, so as you can see, we get some results. Now, as soon as one of the results exceeds 1, we call a cancellation, but you'll notice that we do print out a few more results because remember, this is a concurrent operation. You cannot just go ahead and cancel and expect the other elements not to be processed. So some of the elements which are also greater than 1 were also processed in our loop, and that's completely expected. So these are the ways in which you cancel and handle exceptions.